There are moments in life that mark the turning point between what we think we know and the cold, unvarnished truth. For me, that moment came quietly, without the fanfare or warning you might expect for something so monumental. My name is Sophia, and for much of my adult life, I had built something that became my identity, a successful marketing company that I had founded from scratch. When I first started the business, I was barely in my mid-30s. I had big dreams and a determination that was unmatched. My husband had passed away years earlier, leaving me to raise Emily, my daughter, by myself. There was no safety net, no trust fund. There was only me and my will to make something of myself. Remember the long nights I spent working alone in my small apartment, pitching ideas to clients over the phone, drafting plans, staying up late poring over documents. I often missed family dinners with Emily, the early mornings with her before school, and the weekend outings I promised we'd take together. But I justified it all because I was building something for us. I was doing it for her. She wouldn't understand that at the time, but I hoped she would one day. Eventually, after years of hard work and sleepless nights, the company grew. I moved us into a larger office space, hired a small team, and began landing bigger clients. As the years passed, my company became one of the most trusted names in the industry. From small businesses to big corporations, they all sought my help. And as my business blossomed, so did my financial security. We lived comfortably, and I could finally take a step back and breathe. But I never stopped. There was always more to achieve, more to prove, and more to build. By the time I reached my late 50s, my company had grown into a multi-million-dollar business. We had expanded, had a corporate building, and dozens of employees, each one dedicated and loyal. My company had become my life, my legacy. I had poured every ounce of myself into it, and while the success was rewarding, it came with its own cost. I had missed a lot. Years of Emily's childhood had passed by in a blur, her growing up as I worked tirelessly to keep everything afloat. But all of that changed the day I started feeling different. It began small. I woke up feeling unusually tired, more than I should have, even after a full night's rest. At first, I brushed it off. I thought it was just stress, or maybe I hadn't been sleeping as well as I thought. But over the next few weeks, the fatigue grew worse, and then the pain started. A dull ache in my lower back that wouldn't go away. At first, it was easy to ignore, but soon it became impossible to dismiss. I was always the person who could power through anything. I had built my company from the ground up with nothing more than grit and determination. A little pain shouldn't have been enough to stop me, but it didn't stop. It only got worse. I finally saw the doctor, hoping for a simple answer, a prescription for rest, maybe some painkillers. Instead, the words I heard made everything else around me feel like it was shattering. Cancer. Advanced cancer. It had spread further than I could have ever imagined. I felt like the world had tilted beneath me, and for the first time in my life, I felt small, helpless, and fragile. The doctor's voice seemed so far away, as if I were listening to someone else, someone not connected to me at all. "You need to prepare yourself, Mrs. Thompson. With treatment you have a few months, maybe a year." The words echoed in my mind. I could hardly breathe. What would this mean for Emily? What would this mean for everything I had worked for? My company? The people I had worked alongside for years? All of that seemed so insignificant now. My mind raced and panic set in. I couldn't face the reality of it. I couldn't bear the thought of Emily seeing me like this. She had already lost her father at a young age. The thought of her losing me too, the one person who had been there for her all her life, was unbearable. I couldn't let her go through that again, and I certainly couldn't let her see me weak. I decided to keep it a secret, at least for a while. I didn't want Emily to know. I didn't want anyone to know. I wanted to maintain control over my life and my future, even as everything around me was spiraling. If I could just hold on for a little longer, maybe everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. As weeks passed, my condition worsened. The fatigue, the pain, the endless doctor's appointments, they became my new reality. Yet, I continued to show up to work. I kept the act going for Emily. She never suspected a thing. I continued to tell her that everything was fine, that I was just tired from the long hours. She believed me, of course. She always trusted me. But I could see the worry in her eyes every time she called to check on me. I could see that she knew something was off, but I refused to let her in. I knew I needed to do something. My business, which had been the focus of my life for so long, needed to be taken care of. I couldn't leave Emily with nothing but the weight of my debts and unfinished business. And so, after much thought, I made a decision that would change everything. I made the hardest choice I've ever had to make. I sold my company. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about giving up what I had built. It was about giving Emily a future. I couldn't leave her with nothing. The thought of her struggling after I was gone made my heart ache. And I couldn't let that happen. I found a buyer, someone I trusted to continue the business with the same level of integrity I had maintained for years. The deal went through quietly, behind the scenes, and I walked away with a staggering $5 million. But I didn't tell Emily. She didn't know. She couldn't know. Instead, I put the money in a trust fund that would be hers once I was gone. It would secure her future, give her the life I couldn't be there to see. She would be okay. I knew she would be. I kept the secret to myself, pretending everything was fine, pretending I was just as strong as I had always been. I would visit her, talk to her, and laugh like I always had. But inside, I was falling apart. I was dying, and I couldn't bear the thought of telling her. So, I kept quiet. I held my breath and kept the truth locked inside. And then, one day, as I sat in my office staring at the papers, I realized that I had done everything I could. The company was sold. Emily was set for the future. But the cost of keeping this secret from her was growing unbearable. The weight of the lies was crushing me. I didn't know how much longer I could pretend. The months after I made the decision to sell my company were a blur, a strange mix of exhaustion, relief, and the constant, gnawing anxiety of keeping the truth hidden. My body, though fighting the illness, continued to deteriorate. But my mind was more focused on one thing: Emily. I couldn't let her find out what was really happening. I couldn't bear the idea of her seeing me like this, frail and vulnerable. I spent most of my time in the office, making sure everything continued to run smoothly, even though my strength was rapidly fading. I had left the reins of the company to my trusted managers, but I still insisted on overseeing everything. I couldn't let go, not entirely. It felt like the last part of me that remained intact, the only thing that defined me, and I was terrified of losing that too. Emily didn't know how bad things had gotten. She still called me every day, checking in, but I always told her the same thing. I'm just tired, sweetheart. Just a little under the weather, but I'll be fine. She accepted it, always believing me. But the truth was, I could barely get out of bed some mornings. Every movement was a struggle. My doctor had warned me that the fatigue would worsen, that my energy would continue to diminish, but I hadn't prepared for just how quickly it would happen. There were days when I could barely make it through a meeting. My thoughts clouded, my breathing shallow. I relied on the few people who knew about my condition to cover for me when I needed to step out. No one could know the extent of my illness. Not Emily. Not the employees. Not anyone. But it wasn't just my physical decline that weighed heavily on me. It was the emotional toll of keeping this massive secret. Emily and I had always been close. She was my only child, the person I had dedicated my entire life to, even if it meant sacrificing time and energy away from her. We had shared everything over the years, our hopes, our fears, our dreams. And yet, here I was, keeping the biggest secret of my life from her, and it felt like a betrayal. I could see the subtle changes in her over the months. The phone calls became more frequent, her voice laced with concern each time she asked how I was doing. She had started to visit more often, showing up at my house unannounced, staying longer, trying to make me open up. She would look at me with those eyes filled with love, but also worry, and I knew she could sense something wasn't right. But I brushed her off, making excuses, putting on a smile that I no longer felt. One day, Emily came over to my house and I had planned to keep up the facade. I had told myself I would be fine, just a few hours of pretending everything was okay. But as she walked in, her eyes immediately narrowed, and I could see the concern in her face. "Mum," she said gently, "are you sure you're okay? You don't look like yourself. You're pale and you're so tired all the time. You've been so distant. Please, tell me what's going on." It took everything in me not to crumble at the sound of her voice. She wasn't accusing me. She was just worried, but the weight of her concern felt like a heavy stone lodged in my chest. "I'm just getting older, sweetie," I said, the words coming out too quickly, too defensively. "Just a little run down from work, that's all. You know how it is." She didn't buy it. I could see that she was unconvinced. She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "Mum, you don't have to keep pretending. You don't have to protect me from everything. I'm your daughter. Please just talk to me." My throat tightened, and I had to fight to keep the tears from falling. How could I tell her the truth? How could I say I'm dying? How could I tell her that everything I had worked so hard to create would be left behind? The thought of it was too much. It felt like I would shatter into 1,000 pieces if I said the words aloud. But the fear in her eyes, the palpable worry that radiated from her, made it harder to breathe. She knew something was wrong, and I could feel her slipping away from me. I couldn't lose her. I couldn't lose her trust. I'm just tired, okay?" I said, my voice cracking. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." But Emily wasn't convinced. She stared at me for a long time, and I could see that she wasn't buying the lie anymore. And yet she didn't press. She didn't push me further. Instead, she gave me a tight hug, something she hadn't done in years, and whispered, "You don't have to do everything alone, you know." That was the moment it hit me. It wasn't just my health that I was hiding. It was everything. My entire life was a series of secrets, from the sale of my company to the fact that I had been keeping her in the dark about my illness. The guilt weighed on me like an anchor, dragging me deeper into a sea of lies. I tried to tell myself that I was doing the right thing, that protecting her from the truth was what was best. But with each passing day, it became harder to keep up. The pain in my body was becoming unbearable, the exhaustion more overwhelming, and the lies felt like a prison I couldn't escape as weeks went by. I found myself distancing even further from Emily. I pushed her away, knowing that every time I saw her, I would have to keep pretending. I couldn't be the mother she needed me to be. I couldn't be the person I used to be. And with each distance I put between us, the loneliness began to settle in, making me feel more isolated than I had ever felt in my life. But despite all of this, I continued to carry the weight of the secret. I knew Emily wouldn't understand why I had sold the company. She would never understand that I had done it for her. for her future. I couldn't risk her rejection, her anger, and so I kept it locked away. The hardest part of all of this was that, deep down, I knew I couldn't keep hiding forever. I could feel the end coming closer. I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on, how much longer I could keep pretending that everything was fine. The time was approaching when I would have to tell Emily the truth. But I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I didn't know how she would react. I didn't know if she would be angry, if she would feel betrayed, or if she would even forgive me for keeping this from her. But I knew one thing for certain. I had done my best for her. I had fought for her future, even if it meant sacrificing my own peace of mind. And now, all I could do was hope that when the truth finally came to light, she would understand why I did what I did. But for now, all I could do was keep pretending, keep hiding, and pray that I would have enough time to make things right. Time has a way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. One moment, you're just trying to hold everything together, and the next, you're standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that the fall is inevitable. I had done everything I could to delay the truth, but the weight of my secret had become unbearable. I couldn't pretend any longer. I couldn't keep living a lie. The time had come for me to tell Emily everything. The truth I had been hiding for months. The truth I thought would shatter our relationship forever. The pain in my body had reached a point where I could no longer hide it. The fatigue was relentless, and the simple task of getting out of bed became more and more difficult. The pressure of keeping up appearances was wearing me thin. And Emily, despite all my efforts to protect her, had started to see through the facade. She had noticed the changes, and I could see the concern in her eyes every time she looked at me. It was as if she knew something was wrong, that just didn't have the full picture. I had promised myself that I would tell her when I was ready, but the reality was that I was never going to be ready. I was terrified. Terrified of how she would react. Terrified of losing her trust forever. But more than anything, I was scared that I had kept her at arm's length for too long, that the distance I had created between us would be too much to bridge. I decided that I couldn't wait any longer. I had to tell her. I had to be honest, with the one person who meant everything to me. That night, I called Emily and asked her to come over. I knew she'd be busy, but I also knew she would drop everything to be with me. And so, I waited, pacing the floors of my home, rehearsing what I was going to say, even though I knew the words would never come out the way I expected. When Emily arrived, she seemed more anxious than usual. There was an unspoken tension between us that had been building for months. She knew something was wrong, and I couldn't keep hiding it from her anymore. "Mum?" she called out as she walked through the door, her voice soft with concern. "Are you okay?" I smiled, but it felt hollow, like a mask I had been wearing for far too long. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and worry. "What's going on, Mom? You're scaring me." I sat down on the couch, gesturing for her to sit beside me. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, and I could feel the tears threatening to fall, but I held them back. I had to do this. I had to be strong, even if I felt like I was falling apart on the inside. "Emily," I began, taking a deep breath. "There's something I've been hiding from you. Something that I should have told you a long time ago. And I'm so sorry that I kept it from you. I didn't know how to say it." Her eyes softened, but the concern remained. "Mum, what's going on? Please just tell me." I wiped my hands on my jeans, the anxiety bubbling up inside me. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on me, but I knew I couldn't keep carrying this burden alone. I had to let it go, even if it hurt. "I've been sick. I said, the words coming out in a rush. For months now. I've been diagnosed with cancer, Emily. The doctors say I don't have much time left. Maybe a year if I'm lucky. She froze, her face going pale as the words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Her eyes widened in disbelief. No, Mom. That can't be true. Why didn't you tell me? I could see the pain and shock in her face, and it broke me. I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want you to worry about me, especially with everything you're going through in your own life. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I can't. And I'm sorry. Her eyes filled with tears as she reached out to take my hands. Mum, you don't ever have to handle anything on your own. I'm your daughter. I'm here for you. Why didn't you let me be here for you? I should have known. We should have been doing this together. The guilt washed over me like a tidal wave, and I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I had kept her away for so long, trying to protect her from the truth, and now it was too late. I had failed her. I had failed us both. But there was more. The truth didn't end with my diagnosis. I had to tell her the hardest part of all. That's not all, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I sold the company. The business I spent my whole life building. I sold it for $5 million. I couldn't leave it all behind without knowing you would be taken care of. Emily looked at me, completely stunned. What? You sold the company? Her voice cracked as she tried to process the information. But why? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you involve me? I didn't want to burden you with that either, I said, my voice breaking. I didn't want you to feel like you had to take over. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. That's why I did it, so that you wouldn't have to worry about anything when I'm gone. The silence in the room was deafening. Emily's face had gone from shock to confusion to a raw, vulnerable sadness. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. She didn't know what to say, and honestly, neither did I. I don't know what to feel, Mom, she said finally, her voice low. I don't know what to say. You've been hiding so much from me, and now I don't even know who you are anymore. Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth? Why did you feel like you had to protect me from everything? The pain in her voice cut through me like a knife. It was the question I had feared, the one I had been dreading for months. And it was a question I didn't know how to answer. How could I explain that I had only done what I thought was best for her? How could I make her understand why I kept everything a secret? I thought I was protecting you, I said softly. I thought if I kept everything from you, you wouldn't have to worry. I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't want you to see me weak. But I see now that I've pushed you away, and I'm so sorry. Emily didn't respond immediately. She sat there, her hands folded in her lap, her face a mixture of disbelief and hurt. She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw the walls between us, the distance I had put between us. I don't know how to forgive you for this, Mom, she said quietly, tears slipping down her cheeks. You didn't trust me. You didn't let me be there for you. And now I'm lost. I don't know how to process this. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The sting of rejection cut deep, deeper than any physical pain I had felt. But I knew this was my fault. I had built these walls around myself, kept her at arm's length, and now I was paying the price. I know I failed you, Emily, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But please, I just need you to understand that I did this out of love. I wanted to protect you, and I'll spend every moment I have left trying to make it right. The silence between us stretched out, and I knew that things wouldn't be the same between us anymore. I had broken her trust, and I wasn't sure if I could ever fix it. But I also knew that I had to try. For her, for us. And in that moment, as the tears fell, I realized that the truth, no matter how painful, was the only thing that could heal. The distance between us. But whether we could rebuild what we had, I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to fight for whatever time I had left with her.